We are picking into our last days. So hold me close and I'll surrender to your heart.
From the moment he stepped on the American Idol stage, it was clear that Phillip Phillips had what it takes to become a star. And now, over a decade after his first TV appearance, Phillip seems to have lived a whole lifetime in the music industry. With a career that spans as high as it sinks low, there are so many things about Phillip Phillips that get lost in conversations about his talent. In the past 10 years, since he first entered the limelight, Phillip has experienced many of the highs and lows of the entertainment industry. Everything from lawsuits to gracing Billboard magazine covers. So, join us as we take a look at what really happened to Phillip Phillips from America's Got Talent and where the singer is now.
I'll love you long after we're gone.
Born in Albany, Georgia, Phillip Phillips, ironically enough to Cheryl and Phillip Phillips, had quite a normal childhood, all things considered. With two older sisters, he grew up in Leesburg, where the family moved when he was barely a teenager. After attending Lee County High School, he graduated from Albany Technical College with a major in industrial systems technology. However, Phillip managed to miss the graduation ceremony due to his audition for American Idol, but more on that later. Before he graced American Idol with his presence and changed the course of his life, Phillip worked at his family's pawn shop. And when he was in middle school, he started playing music with a specific focus on the guitar. Phillips's longtime friend and later brother-in-law Benjamin Neal particularly helped him hone in on his skills and develop a genuine interest in music. Eventually, Benjamin, who Phillips is credited with being a mentor-like figure to him, joined Phillip to form the Phillip Phillips Band with his other brother-in-law, Todd Urich. The group managed to book gigs in various local venues and events, and Phillip even managed to win a local singing competition, Albany Star, in 2010. In his journey of discovering and constructing his own music style, he's also found out his own musical taste and favorite singers he's inspired by. He names Johnny Lang as his absolute favorite musician, along with Damian Rice, John Butler, and Mumford & Sons. This is because he grew up listening to a lot of 60s and 70s music, and then felt gravitated towards artists with a similar style. In fact, he's even described his own music as jazz and rock alternative sounds. Before auditioning for American Idol and winning the show, Phillip actually also auditioned on the second season of America's Got Talent, but not much is known about that. Phillip Phillips auditioned for American Idol in Savannah, Georgia, and even before his performance moved hundreds of thousands of people, his general demeanor had won over show executive producers. In fact, Meghan Michaels-Wolflick would go on to say that when Phillip walked in the room on his audition day, she immediately thought he'd win the season. And no one could have blamed her for thinking that, since Phillip's extraordinary charm, tacked onto his singing ability, makes him an incredibly likable contestant to root for. Naturally, his rendition of Stevie Wonder's Superstition and Michael Jackson's Thriller immediately went viral, and even now amasses millions of views on YouTube and other social media websites. The story of his audition is a famous one, and one that cemented him as a worthy contestant early on. Soon afterward, he advanced to the semi-finals and was voted into the top 13. His time on the show was pretty memorable, and has even been compared to the likes of Dave Matthews after he covered one of the musician's songs in the competition. When asked about the comparison, Dave said that he didn't mind, and in fact, wouldn't mind it if Phillip replaced him in his band, joking that maybe then he could finally retire. Mentor Stevie Nicks also became fond of the singer on the show and said that he was good enough to join Fleetwood Mac back in 1975 after a particularly invigorating performance of Johnny Lang's Still Rainin', which inspired standing ovations from all the judges. Unfortunately, despite winning the show, all was not smooth sailing for Phillip on the show. After the top 13 performance night, unexpected health scares forced the musician to visit the hospital. Turns out he had a pretty serious case of kidney stones that needed to be treated over the course of his time on the show. After 8 procedures whilst he was still performing, Phillip considered just quitting since the pain was getting too hard to bear. But as we know now, he didn't end up following through on that thought. And what a magnificent idea that was, since he had his magnum opus American Idol moment as a top 4 contestant with a cover of Damian Rice's Volcano soon after that. Eventually though, as we're aware, he beat out Jesse Sanchez as the winner after a record-breaking 132 million votes were cast, and Phillip himself describes it as a life-changing moment for him. Winning on a platform like that is one of the best things that can happen to someone's career, since it provides a musician with basically everything they need to succeed in the industry. Phillip's coronation song, Home, was released after his performance and went on to have the biggest digital sales week for any Idol winner's coronation song, which is pretty impressive. He sold over 5 million copies in the US, and the song has even been used in NBC's coverage of the Olympics, LA Marathon, various commercials, film trailers, and in various TV shows. It's clear that Phillip was determined not to let the opportunity go by. He had a great mentor on the show, and his victory had provided him with ample exposure and a spot on the American Idol's live tour in 2012. He was also invited to perform the national anthem at the opening game of the 2012 World Series, which really opened the door for a lot of musical opportunities to knock on his door in the future. Being the compassionate guy he is, he co-held a concert to raise money for those affected by Hurricane Sandy around the same time. This started his early career moments, where he performed for a lot of talk shows, and we do mean a lot, alongside his irregular but pretty popular concerts in more exclusive venues. For each year he was qualified, which were 3 in total, Phillip also made the Forbes highest-earning American Idol list, at least somewhere in the top 5. It didn't take him long to capitalize on all the eyes on him at the time and released his debut album, The World from the Side of the Moon, in 2012, on which he co-wrote the majority of the music, with his first album debuting at number 4 on the Billboard's 200 chart, where it stayed for 61 weeks in total. It was a no-brainer that he was an up-and-coming star to keep an eye out for. He was soaring high, and despite his goofy-sounding name, Phillip was making Billboard magazine covers, opening for Matchbox 20, and even headlining college dates with his own 4-piece acoustic band. He also toured for John Mayer back in 2013 for his Born and Raised World Tour, after which he went on to do a series of shows and performances that set new milestones for his career as a singer. The same year, in 2013, Phillip was nominated at the American Music Awards for Best New Artist, understandably enough, and he joined Kelly Clarkson and Carrie Underwood as the only American Idol winners to receive this nomination. He was also making strides in his personal life at the time, and he and his longtime girlfriend, Hannah Blackwell, got engaged in 2014 and tied the knot in Albany on October 24, 2015. In 2014, Phillip was ready to release his second studio album, Behind the Light, an album he'd consistently been talking about and working on the past year. And on May 19, 2014, he released the sophomore album to, again, a great reception. His songs were featured in the National Hockey League's playoffs, and he even received an award for songwriting on Raging Fire, his first single from the album. Eventually, he launched a US tour for the album, and it was all smooth sailing until Phillips filed a lawsuit against his label, 19 Recordings, on January of 2015. He'd wanted to be free of the contract, and the lawsuit would not be resolved until June of 2017. He also returned to American Idol in 2016 and performed a tribute to David Bowie, with 4 other winners of the show. Later that year, Phillip performed at the 2016 Invictus Games closing ceremony in Orlando, Florida, and even headlined a tour with Matt Nathanson at the San Diego County Fair. Now, with his singing career going so well, Phillip decided to try his hand at acting and appeared in an episode of Hawaii Five-0, where he played a diamond smuggler in 2018. He also released his third studio album Collateral in 2018 and almost immediately went on tour to support the album. He had his son in November of 2019 and has only increased his philanthropic efforts since. Over the course of the pandemic and afterward, Phillip put on and collaborated on several fundraisers and concerts that donated to charities supporting those who'd been caught in the tragedy. In 2022, though, Phillip had to return to American Idol once more, and he performed his latest single at the time, Love Like That, ironically enough, on the same day he won on the show, a decade later. Eventually, he released his fourth studio album, Drift Back, on June 9, 2023, and without the support of a recording label, he still managed to hit all the relevant charts. He was also invited back on American Idol as a mentor during Hollywood Week, and it seems like, for the most part, he stuck to his usual schedule of showings and performances. He went on a US tour to support Drift Back, and even now is managing to achieve new milestones in his career.